I'll call the meeting to order and invite everyone to rise and join the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll start with the agenda approval. And my understanding is, Jeremy, you can vote on the approval because you're a member of the council, even though you haven't been sworn in yet. So you can participate in this part of it.
Thank you.
So, Brad, do you have any changes or updates for the agenda?
No changes. Just for those listening in, we of course have a couple of public comment periods on business items. The open forum first public comment period is for items not on the agenda, and the other ones will come later. Mayor, as you mentioned, upon receiving the certificate of election, Councilmember Nichols is a council member. So we do have the oath, but correct, he is able to vote immediately. So no changes is the short answer to that.
Okay, anything from the council? Any changes, additions, things you'd like to see? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Lothar.
Second, Bottom.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bottom.
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Commission representatives, I saw Dean Jacobs on here earlier, but I think the Planning Commission is Dean Jacobs and Alicia Hoffman is from the Parks and Trails Commission. So as always, if something comes up that's in your wheelhouse that you want to
We have an oath.
We have an oath to do.
Okay, gotcha. We'll take care of that now. So right now we have the oath of office. I assume that that Jessica is going to handle that.
Mayor and Council, so due to COVID, what we had last time actually is actually the council member to just read the oath on their own. So if that's okay with you, Jessica, we can proceed that way.
Yes, thank you.
We'll save Jessica from the coordination. I, Jeremy Nichols, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of council member for the city of Corcoran, Minnesota, and to do so with my best judgment and ability. So help me God.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy, and welcome aboard. And I wish you a fruitful and productive couple of years on the council.
Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll talk about commission representatives, which is Dean Jacobs and Alicia Hoffman. And as I said earlier, if there's something you want to weigh in on, just be recognized and we'll put you on. Okay, at this time we'll have open forums. This is for any items that are not on the agenda. Anyone in the public would like to be recognized, please raise your hand and Jessica will put you on and we'll listen to your comments.
Wonderful, thanks, Mayor. If you'd like to be recognized, you can do so by pressing the *9 button on your phone, and then you'd state your first and last name. Otherwise, if you want to, if you're joining us via video, you can press the participants button and then the raise hand video as well. At this time, Mayor, there's not anyone currently raising their hand.
Okay, we'll wait a minute here. Give it a little bit of time. Okay, anyone wishing to comment on a public forum, this would be the time to do that.
Yep. You can press that *9 button or the raise your hand button.
I don't know if I can be seen.
Hearing none, we'll move on.
I'm raising my hand. Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello. Can you state your name and address? I'm sorry, I can't see that in the.
Well, the feeling's mutual. I barely got on. So it's David Foy, 8115, County 116.
David, just to jump in, so this is for open forum items that are items not on the agenda. We will have one for planning business later.
I just signed on and I heard the open forum end of the bell So shut me off, that's fine.
Well, yeah, we'll get you later. I assume it's regarding Rush Creek Reserve.
Okay,
Mayor, at this time, there's no one else using the raise their hand function.
okay, so we'll move on. No presentation or recognitions. So we'll start with the consent agenda consisting of items 8A through G. I would like to pull item B just for a minor comment or clarification that may or may not be necessary. Anyone else wish to pull any items from the consent agenda?
I pull item E.
Item E, okay. Okay, so hearing no other ones, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 8A, C, D, F, and G as presented.
So moved.
Second, Lothar.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Nichols,
Aye.
Bodema,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item B, which is the draft minutes from the November meeting, just item 9 on page 2. There's this is done the assessment and the deferral of the payments, and this may be implied, but I want to make sure item 9B, it just says agreement to pay deferred assessment upon removal of the Green Acres program. I think it should also say upon sale of the property.
Sure.
We just don't want in 20 years, we don't want to have another go around on this. So if we could
Thank
add
you,
that.
Mayor. We can make that correction.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had. Is there any discussion on that issue? I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 8B with that modification.
So moved, Nichols.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Lothar,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
and Bodema.
Abstain. I was not at the meeting.
That's fine. You can abstain, but you could vote on it even though you weren't there, but that's up to you. Item 8E, Alan, you had something on that?
Yeah, I just want to understand. So the property owner requested it to be put on the county tax assessment for the coming year versus it being paid out over a 10-year deferment?
Yes, Mayor Council, that's correct, which is where we started at. And then there was a bunch of issues raised regarding that happening. So we came up with a couple of different options to make other options available. At the end of the day, the person then decided to just go back to the original taxes. So we're just really memorializing that in the resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, there could be their personal tax implications. That's
Yeah,
the reason they're doing
yeah, I
that,
can't judge on that. I
Exactly.
was just
That's-
curious.
Yep.
Thank
Okay,
you.
was that it? I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 8E as presented.
So moved.
Second, Lothar.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bodema,
Abstain.
Lothar,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to planning business. At this point in time, we'll take public comment. The planning business items consist of a final PUD development plan and final plat for Rush Creek Reserve, Ravinia 15th edition, the preliminary plat for the Tesmer Weber properties, and a minor subdivision for St. Teresa at 8200 County Road 116. Anyone wishing to comment on these items, please be recognized by Jessica at this time, and we'll listen to your comments.
Thanks, Mayor. Anyone who would like to participate can click the raise your hand function. It looks like by pressing *9 on your phone. Otherwise, you click the participants tab on a phone or tablet or computer, and you'll click the raise the hand function. I do have one person raising their hand here. Karen Lymangood, I'm going to go ahead and recognize you. If you could give us your name and address.
I'm Karen Lymangood at 8105 County Road 116, Corcoran.
Thank you.
And I am one of the northerly properties just north of Rush Creek. And I have been working with M&I John Rask concerning the stormwater drainage system. We've talked about pipes when we first started talking. We talked about ditches. And I just want to, you know, for the record, say that I'm not opposed to development, but I am opposed to my property being flooded with the 250 homes that are going in. So we are working with M&I, but nothing has been decided yet. Nothing has been put in writing. And what I'm wondering is Resolution 40 pertains to the northerly property owners. After you approve the PUD, if you approve the PUD today, you know, what happens to us? Who's gonna enforce that M&I will keep working with us and put a stormwater plan together? I don't want them to get approved and then all of a sudden they're like just dropping us. And wondered if you could comment on that. Basically that nothing's been decided yet, but I want to make sure that the city will enforce it, you know, after the PUD is approved tonight.
Okay, Karen, what we'll do is we'll make sure that during the discussion on that we have Kevin and or Brad go into that issue of how the stormwater is followed up on and what happens with that after the approval, because it is a process that happens normally after the project is started. So we'll be sure and we'll cover that.
Okay, and then I'll just defer to David because I know he wanted to talk on the subject too, my neighbor.
Okay, well, he can speak for himself, I guess. So.
Okay, this is David. Is the time for me this time or?
Yeah, this would be the time to do it, David.
Okay, great. I've actually had several.
Oh, you got to give your name and address over again, I guess. So.
Start up, okay. David Foy, 8115 County Road 116. Obviously Corcoran, adjacent to Karen's.
Okay.
All good?
Yep, go ahead, Dave, thanks.
So, and I caught about half what Karen said. I was not upstairs here on the computer when you guys were talking, but I believe that, I believe she said, and we've been dealing with a flood for, well, this turned around 11 years, but actually for years prior to that. And we've said in numerous open forums prior to M&I showing up that we have a problem, and the city has looked at it. And I've said in planning commission meetings recently and prior and other council meetings, we've had city councilmen out when we're underwater flooded, not limited to the 11-inch rain that obviously is a rare occasion. I showed Brian Lothar where water was the middle of my 3/4-ton truck door going over my own driveway. So we've had some serious water. I won't belabor that. I can tell you what I've told, tell the council what I've told the planning commission and others, and that is that we gave up. When I say we, it's myself, Pat Surprisen, Steve Lesser, who's now sold and moved to Greenfield about a month ago, Karen and Chuck Lyman, when Chuck was alive. We've dealt with this. We attempted to deal with the city. We were told several times the city doesn't have money to clean ditches and clean out the creek, especially not just the Corcoran part of the creek, but into Maple Grove. And in fact, we've learned that it's not really a creek, it's ditch number something or other. I'm sure Kent or Brad or somebody can tell us, yeah, ditch 36 or 40, whatever it is. So we've gone through the water thing, we beat it to death. Brad's probably tired of hearing it. But I can tell you 11 years ago, roughly, I hired Steve Conan to clean out minor side ditches and clear up a little bit of what used to be the original creek or runoff before ditch number whatever was built. And I got a cease and desist order served on me from the local game warden. And I dealt with the Nazis at Rush Creek Watershed District. So during that course of time, it took me 11 months to get it cleared up, that all I did was clean up something that was already there. So I'm going on record to say that if we do a ditch, I know, like all the farmers know, and any other country kid knows, I'm not a country kid, but they are, that the ditches fill in. They silt in, they fill in, organic material grows, willows grow, they need to be maintained. And so the water drainage that's proposed, the ditching, Karen and I have talked, we're not 100% for or against it versus a pipe. There's pros and cons. So there's a half a dozen things we just want to go on record. I think Karen's listening. And
Yes.
I wanted the council to hear what we've told the planning commission and what we've learned and said since. And if I can take a minute to say those things, I'll be done. One is that if we create a ditch, we believe the correct path for that ditch, assuming engineering and depth and everything makes sense, goes from the currently Ebert future M&I land straight north to the creek without bends and turns on deep into my land, but literally approximately following the common border I have with Lyman Goods. Secondly, that ditch should be able to be mowed and maintained. And third, we believe there ought to be future checking on that ditch by the city maintenance and engineer people. It will only work if it's maintained. And I'm not young enough that I could plan on 20 years of maintaining it. I think the city should. Secondly, the ditch should not be written in stone, meaning the future buyer of Karen's land, Karen Lyman Good, and the land Heidi and I own, and for that matter, any other land adjacent to us, may want to move that ditch. I think that the council needs to make it clear that the ditch is an answer today. It may not be an answer tomorrow for a future buyer that wants to move it or create some other activity. So I don't want it to be memorialized as some sort of a wetland future ditch, something or other, and give it to the watershed district for them to control. So maintenance of the ditch, the geographical location of the ditch, and the future of moving that ditch if a future buyer or developer, or for that matter, Karen and I wake up one day and say, well, Karen, we've really got a problem here. That ditch is a big problem. So it shouldn't be put in stone that a solution for the water is the only solution. And I've run all this stuff by councilmen and by engineers of the city, by the manager of the city, and of course, developer M&I Homes through John. If I'm quiet now, maybe you guys can continue. How's that?
Okay, David, thanks for your input. Yeah, water's a significant issue for a lot of people in Corcoran, and we hear you. Okay, Jessica, is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
Yes, Mayor. We have a caller ending in 8753. You can go ahead and press *6 and unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Greg Hoagland. I'm at 19220 Hackamore Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Greg.
Okay. I wanted to address Miss Lyman Good. I was a big fan of Chuck, and I've known I got to know him for a number of years, and what a great guy, and his service to the city of Corcoran was outstanding. And the reason I'm calling in here tonight is I have tremendous empathy for you guys, and the city's got a zest to develop, and I happen to be adjacent to Ravinia, Corcoran's first development. And if a little history lesson there, back in 2014 with Ron Thomas and Ken Gunther as the mayor, they wouldn't even allow us to talk that night about, I've got a pipe, which is Elm Creek, which runs from the 450 homes into my property. And a little history that night, they wouldn't even allow me to address the water issues, which anyone could tell. And I do remember Ron Thomas saying, I think they're going to be really good neighbors. That was the last time I ever heard from Ron. But in that process, and you're going to hear it tonight, they're going to focus on the siding and the garage doors and the types of homes and what have you. But it's clear you've got some significant water challenges, just like I did. And after the thing was approved, not once, not twice, but many times, I had up to 8 acres of turbid water, soil erosion, flooding into my property with straw, everything. And the city, nor Lennar, the strategic partner of Corcoran, never gave a crap. Okay, and I've been pretty vocal about that over the years. So my point to you guys tonight, as they go through this whole process, and they're going to approve this because this is all about downtown Corcoran. Just like Ravinia, there was never any regard to the adjacent property owners. In fact, Ron's never even publicly commented around my challenges over the years. And my point on this is, if there are any water issues, the logic is the city is going to help you, or the logical process will be the developer is going to help you. And that's more than likely not going to be the case if there's significant water challenges. And my advice to you is go directly to the Minnesota Pollution Control, which is the authority above the city and the developer. That's the only way you're going to get attention if there are challenges. And that's what my wife and I had to do. And there were several fines levied to the developer and what have you. So I have empathy what's happening tonight. The city has long wanted a development in their little downtown there, and they're going to push it through. So Mrs. Lyman-Good, I loved how your lawyer got involved last time, and just if there are issues, you've got to go above the city, because more than likely they're, at least in the previous regime, nobody gave a crap. Maybe in the new mayor and going forward they will. Those are my comments. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Jessica, anyone else?
Sorry about that. Mayor, I again have Karen Lyman-Good. You'd like to, Karen has raised her hand again.
Okay, we'll listen to her once more. Karen?
Oh, I was just going to say, Greg, thank you for your kind words about Chuck. You worked really hard for the city of Corcoran. And I think you can see that sometimes holding ponds don't work. And I just ask the city council to recognize that and do something and enforce it so that we don't have to go through what Greg went through. And thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Is anyone else, Jessica?
Mayor, I do not believe anyone else.
Okay, so we'll move on, and we'll move on to item 9A, which is the final PDU development plan and final plat for Rush Creek Reserve. So Kendra, you taking that, or?
I am. Jess is going to pull, somebody's going to pull up the PowerPoint. And then we'll get started. There we go. So this is the final PUD development plan and final plat for Rush Creek Reserve, which is formerly Sawgrass. And I'm going to go through in some detail, but I'm going to go through fairly quickly. This is the project. This image on the screen, the location map outlined in blue, is the project site. The yellow and blue areas are potential wetlands identified by Hennepin County. And the hashed areas that are blue to the north of the site and cross-hatched are the floodplain areas. So the properties to the north are also wetlands and floodplains that are impacted by the creek winding through there. Next slide. So a little bit of background, the concept plan for Sawgrass, which is what it was called previously, was approved or reviewed in 2014 to kick off an environmental assessment worksheet, which was completed in November of 2014. The city granted preliminary approvals for 246 homes on 103 acres in December of 2014, and then has granted several extensions to those preliminary approvals. In April of this year, after granting another extension, the council reviewed a new concept plan, and the primary purpose was to make sure it was generally consistent with the approved PUD from 2014. Next slide. And the council felt that it generally was. The preliminary approvals from 2014 granted flexibility that remained with the project to reduce lot sizes, both lot area and lot width, to reduce setbacks, for additional signage, for some flexibility from the architectural design standards, specifically regarding garages, to allow alternative wetland buffers, to allow trails within the wetland buffer, which would not normally be allowed, and some shoreland overlay flexibility related to a number of factors. Next slide. So with the final PUD and final plat, the council's role is to review and see if it is consistent with the preliminary approvals. If it is, the council's discretion is limited. Jessica's just testing me tonight. Next slide. The project now, I think the next slide is the project in front of us compared to the original plan. There we go. On the left is the original site plan. On the right is the revised plan. I think the big change, really, if you look in the center, it looks roughly the same. What I would highlight is on the far west, the left side of the screen, there was a future subdivision planned in the original approvals, which is not part of this approval. That roughly 7.5 acres will be retained by the existing landowner. And on the east side, on the lower right, there's a chunk of property that was proposed for future townhomes and will now be sold to St. Thomas Church. So slightly smaller site, but within the center where development's proposed, you can see it's very similar to the 2014 plan. Next slide. The new development, as I said, is only part of the original 103 acres. And so as part of this development, the PUD rezoning was approved in 2014, but doesn't become final until the PUD final plan is approved. So if approved tonight, then the rezoning would be mapped. And that rezoning would only apply to the center portion that's part of the PUD, the portion on the right and the left, which are being retained by the developer or sold to St. Thomas, would retain the existing RSF2 zoning. The key changes to the PUD, they've eliminated the 75-foot wide lots that were part of the original approval. And when they came to the council in April, they agreed that they would, in exchange for eliminating those lots, they would increase the side yard setbacks on the other single family lots from 5 feet, which was approved, to 7.5 feet. So instead of 10 feet between buildings, 15 feet between buildings. They've increased the number of homes from 246 to 255. A large part of that is the addition of townhomes from 20 to 56, and the addition of twin homes, which neither of which we currently have in Corcoran. They have some additional changes, requested flexibility from the townhome minimum garage size. Townhome details were not provided in the 2014 approvals. And additional flexibility from the single family, villa, and twin home garage face limits, and from some of the townhome architectural standards. Next slide. The, did we skip over it? Well, in any case, the Planning Commission reviewed these changes and recommended approval of the request on a 3-to-1 vote, with one change to the conditions related to the garage coverage. So condition number 10C of the resolution 2020-87. The Planning Commission made one change, which is reflected in your draft resolution. The applicant had requested 77% garage face, and the Planning Commission recommended only 65%, which would eliminate the 3-car garage options for the villas and single family homes. And so the developer will, I know they're on the call and would like to talk more about that this evening, and that was in your packet as well, with some additional information about how garage face is calculated on a multi-story building and where this would impact the project. Sorry, Jess, if you could skip ahead to where we were now. I missed that slide somehow. Yeah, so those were the requested standards that was in your packet. Just the next couple slides just are some general examples of the architecture. So single family villa units here on this slide. The next slide I think has twin homes and the townhome units, right? On the left is the twin home and on the right is the townhome unit as an example. Next slide. So the flexibility for garage face, the code limits single family and twin homes. The amount of the ground floor elevation is limited to 55% of the front face of the building. It's not the front face of the building for all levels, it's just the ground level front face. And that condition or restriction does not apply to townhomes. So in this case, it applies only to the single family homes, including the villas and the twin homes. The original PUD allowed 60% for single family and up to 70% for townhomes. Again, the code doesn't limit townhomes, but the PUD did. Twins were not part of the original PUD, so the code was silent on the twin homes. So the new request, and again, there was a little confusion after the Planning Commission between the developer's request and me. So it's actually a request for 77% for single family and villas, 70% for twins, and 72% for townhomes. Planning Commission recommended approval of the twin and townhome percentages, but recommended only 65% coverage for the single family homes. Next slide. So the applicant provided this exhibit, which is in your packet, that shows where the single family homes would be located that would be affected by this restriction. And two examples. On the top example is a single or a two stall garage, and on the bottom is a 3-stall garage, and they provided some calculations about if we counted multiple stories, what the percentages would be. So again, the draft resolution reflects the Planning Commission recommendation, but certainly the council could come to a different conclusion and modify that condition if you wished. Next slide. Single family and twin homes need to comply with the design standards in the code, except for those PUD flexibilities that we already talked about. Next slide. Townhomes, I wanted to highlight, we talked about this for those who were involved in the Tavera project. The code has some minimum garage sizes for townhomes, and the applicant's requesting flexibility from those. Given that the townhomes will have association maintenance, so homeowners will not need to have For example, snow plows and lawnmowers, because that'll be maintained by the association. All garages comply with the minimum 20-foot width, but are smaller than the minimums outlined in the code. Second, flexibility for the townhomes is some request for flexibility from the material standards. And if you go to the next slide, staff is recommending some improvements to the side and rear elevations. So the code talks about equal treatment on all 4 sides. And I think they do a really nice job on the front of the townhomes, that top elevation. And on the rear, they do a good job of breaking up the rear of the elevation with the roof line. That's something we specifically call out. It's not just a single flat roof. It's got some changes in the roof line to add interest. And potentially have some decks popping out from those sliding glass doors that you can see on the back. But the plans as shown are simply lap siding. And the same for the side elevation on the left. The side elevation on the right does have more interest with the shake that's shown on the peak. And we'd like to see some continuation of that type of a thing on the rear and other side elevation. Planning Commission had a fair amount of discussion about this. In my staff report, I talk about some ways they can accomplish that with different colors of lap siding, with some breaker board, with some thicker trim around the windows and doors on those side and rear elevations like they have on the front. And the Planning Commission felt that if the applicant complied with those conditions, that it would be consistent with the spirit of the design guidelines for townhomes. Next slide. The HOA will maintain all of the common areas in the outlots. They'll maintain the cul-de-sacs, landscaping, as well as the median plantings and the pond areas. The street connection will be a new access from County Road 10, which will require turn lanes to be constructed and a trail crossing to connect this development to the city park on the south side of 10. The city will design, bid, and manage those improvements at the developer's cost. So that's addressed in the conditions as well as in the development agreement. The plans also show future connections to the north and east, or for future development to those adjacent properties to the west as well, and to connect ultimately out to 116. We've provided 2 stub locations where those utilities and streets could ultimately extend out to 116 and align with the future street stubs planned for the town center, which we'll talk about later with the St. Therese project. Next slide. Parking is allowed on the streets. However, the townhomes are required to provide 1 off-street stall for every 5 units. So they do need to revise the plans to show where those parking stalls will be located. Utilities are going to be provided, municipal sewer and water. However, the existing sanitary sewer lift station on the south side of the project will be removed and a new lift station will be constructed on the north. Next slide. Which could result in the loss of 1 unit up there. So if you look at this image, if you could see on the bottom right, there's a red dot where the existing lift station is. And as part of this project, that'll get relocated up to that green star on the very northeast part of the project. And depending on the final design, that may result in the loss of 1 unit up there adjacent to that. Next slide. Wetland, there are some wetland impacts and they'll be providing wetland banking on site. They are working through that process with the city as the LGU. Again, there's a lot of floodplain north of this site and a little bit encroaches into this site, but no floodplain impacts are proposed. That floodplain remains in the open outlot areas. Stormwater, yes, absolutely important as outlined in the staff report. The resolution approving it in the engineer's memo. Stormwater plans must be revised to comply with the engineer's memo and comply with local watershed and state requirements. We certainly take that very seriously and have included specifically condition number 40 to address the specifically address the property owners to the north and the developer's requirement to work with the city and the property owners to the north to address some of the existing drainage problems that they are experiencing. And that gets managed by city staff as well as those watershed and state agencies as we move through the process. Next slide. Parks and trails, credit will be given for off-road trails per our policy. There are no off-road trails in this first phase. Those green lines are the trails. The red lines are the planned sidewalks. And then there is, as I mentioned, a County Road 10 trail crossing that will be designed by the city in conjunction with Hennepin County. The trails will be deeded in an easement, but the park dedication will be met by a combination of that land dedication for the trails and cash. For this first phase, park dedication will be cash in lieu of land. Next slide. This is the phasing plan. Blue is phase 1. This is the final plat you'll be looking at this evening. Phase 2 is the yellow area, and the final phase, phase 3, is the green area shown on the plans. Next slide. And this is the final plat. This is what creates the parcels themselves. Next slide. And so with that, we recommend the council move to adopt resolution 20-87 approving the final PUD development plan that reflects the Planning Commission change to resolution 10, item 10C. And we recommend adoption of resolution 2020-88 approving the final plat and the development contract. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer questions. I know the Public Works Director is on the line, and the applicant is here this evening as well.
Okay, why don't we, I would suggest that we move forward with any council members have specific questions for Kendra and or Kevin. And then perhaps we can address the water issue, how that's dealt with from assurances for the Lima goods and FOIs going forward. And then after that, we can just address specific, try and highlight any specific issues that people have, and we can kind of knock them off one at a time. So let's start out. Any questions from the council members from Kendra or Kevin as far as the project itself for clarification?
One item that wasn't mentioned, and I haven't heard it addressed specifically in the past either, so this might be an oddball question, but this is my first meeting, so here I go.
Sure.
What is being done in this neighborhood for internet connectivity? And does this create any opportunities for other adjacent areas that might be poorly served to piggyback on to what's going to be installed for this new development?
Andrew, want to jump on that?
No, I don't. I'm not aware of anything related to private utilities. Brad, I don't know if you've had any conversations with Comcast or those folks.
No, and Kevin can probably speak the most eloquently on how development goes with internet. I mean, the drainage in the DNU areas are meant for services to be extended, so same as Ravinia. New infrastructure is installed as the development moves forward. Typically, not extended outside the project area. But Kevin, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I guess short story is that there's a demand for it. So typically the developers will bring those utilities to the site itself. Power, gas, and communications are the primary ones. And if they do come, we require them to be installed joint trench underground. So that's really the role that we play. And I don't know if John wants to speak to that later, John Rask with MI, about how they coordinate that process. It's really a private transaction between them, the developer and the provider. But we do have a mechanism that basically dictates how it gets implemented and where it goes so that we have management of our right of way in the future.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mr. Mayor, is this an okay time to talk about the stormwater drainage issues, or do you rather cover other things first?
I guess I would prefer that we let's get any general questions out of the way, and then we can attack. I would suggest then we specifically attack the stormwater and put that to bed before we go on with the rest of the discussion. So
I I have a question related to Jeremy's question. And then I have some comments later, but Brad, is there anything preventing from an individual member of council exploring the option of working with the internet company to enhance the internet capabilities of the location, or can the individual council speak on behalf of council and try to arrange something like that with the permission later of council?
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, and on your own, you certainly could work with Comcast. We do have a specific government relations person that I work with and on behalf of the council. And typically on a non-COVID year, that was going to be one of the priorities already to work on. Understanding the gaps in City of Corcoran was one of our strategic working items. I do have another meeting set up, I think actually early December, to get that going again. But it's something I would probably recommend at the direction of council, for me and a council member, or just me, to work on meeting your goals. But I think we're open to any approach. It'd be more effective through my government relations person, I can guarantee you that.
So Jeremy and I don't always see eye to eye on the government's role in internet connectivity. And I totally welcome him doing that, as other members of council have before, taking up a cause and filling in that gap. I'm totally open to that. And I'm not even making fun of you, Jeremy. I've had disagreements before with people and on the role of government, and I've had to do a bunch of stuff on my own. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm totally open to what you have to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. My perspective on it is just that if there are little things that we can be doing as new developments come in that might unlock doors for later projects, it makes sense to identify what those are. Maybe we choose not to do them. Maybe it's beyond the scope of what we're legally allowed to do or what we choose to do. But I just wanted to bring the issue out into the open so we could discuss and see if there were opportunities. But it sounds like we aren't quite in a place where we can answer that question.
Yeah, my guess is that'll be a good subject you guys can have when you work on your goals for next year as a council. So, and I agree with you, Jeremy. I think it's something that the council should be looking at from the standpoint that if anybody cares. Okay, any other specific questions to the overall project?
One other question I had was with regards to the limitation on garage frontage, prohibiting the 3-car stalls being a possibility. I think it was pointed out in Planning Commission, but maybe Kendra can correct me on this, that only one of the 3-car garage models becomes banned if we don't change the frontage limitation. I thought it was just the Magnolia wouldn't be an option, but the other 3-car choices would still be available to consumers.
I think, in fact, that that was one villa, was the Magnolia, and that I think the limitation affected all of the single-family homes. So villas are a type of a single-family home with association maintenance, but my understanding was that it affected most of the single-family homes and only the Magnolia villa unit.
Okay.
But again, I would ask if MI has an opportunity to clarify that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other general questions? Clarifications? Kendra, in your opinion, would be best to for us to get into the watershed issues first, or should we have MI, if they wanted to address any of the issues, have them do that first?
Might be helpful, since MI met with the neighbors last
Right.
week. It might be helpful for them to go first and then hear their thoughts on that and then come back to the council.
Yeah, and then we could then go back to MI if something else comes up afterwards as far as the general project. So I guess, yeah, is John going to give us a rundown on stuff, or how's that going to work? Who's going to do that?
I can, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can, John.
Great. John Rask with MI Homes, 5354 Parkdale Avenue, St. Louis Park. Yeah, we have been meeting with Karen Lyman-Good and David Foy about the drainage that goes from our site, onto their site and eventually down to the creek, and as well as working with the city, and we'll start the watershed process now to identify, what specifically that looks like. we're open to whatever feasible solution exists, whether that's an open ditch or a pipe. We've identified a few options on that. We'll continue to work with the city and watershed. I can't tell you right now what the various authorities are going to permit, but certainly want to make sure that it's workable for all those that are involved. I heard the comments from Mr. Hoagland, and I am not familiar with that situation, but we've been developing in Corcoran now for almost 4 years now in Bass Lake, and we too had some significant water issues to deal with our neighbors to the north, the Lures who farm that property. And I think if they were on the line, they would tell you we've done a very responsible job of managing our water. I think the city would agree. You always get minor issues when you're trying to tie in drainage and you're making changes to the landscape. But, I don't see that as a city function. I see that as a property owner function. We've got to be the responsible people to work with our neighbors. And we've done that with the Lures and the other property owners out there, the Shomers. And I think we've left it in a better state than when we started. And I think the same is true here, where we can hopefully make improvements that not only accommodate our stormwater, but can help improve the drainage for both the Lyman Goods and the Foys for their respective properties. The one significant thing is we've shared with them is we're doing a lot of wetland mitigation. We're restoring a large wetland that was previously drained, and we're doing that by controlling the water level and retaining more water on the site. And we're able to show that we're really dialing back the rate at which the water leaves our site because of the stormwater improvements and the wetland restoration. So we do have some impacts to wetlands, but we're restoring far more wetlands than what we're impacting and retaining more water on the site than what previously existed. Past agricultural activities had drained those wetlands effectively, and we're going to work to restore those. So I think we're going to do a number of things here, not only providing a conveyance route down to the creek, but also retaining more water back on our site, which I think will help fix that situation. I think just with regard to the plat in general, we've tried to keep the sawgrass plat as it was originally envisioned in 2014. I think it's a nice design. We're saving about 38% of the site in open space. When you look closely at the plat, you'll see that a lot of the lots back up to open space. We have open space features between them, so you don't have many lots backing up to other lots. So I think it'll have a real good feel to it. This is a single family project in the Rockford School District. We'll be offering some age targeted, but we'll be also offering 2-story homes for families wishing to live in this part of Corcoran and attend the Rockford School District. And I know that's a unique opportunity here at this site where most of the projects in your community have been in the Wayzata district. And then we also have the unique opportunity to introduce some townhomes. The original plat, as Kendra noted, had 20 units, and 20 units is really a tough number to make a townhome community work because of the association maintenance. You have to have a little larger critical mass. So we've increased that to 56 and then introduced twin homes, which will also be part of that association maintenance of the buildings and of the yard areas. And feel like that's a good mix for Corcoran and this particular community and neighborhood. The townhomes unfortunately won't be as affordable as maybe we'd like, starting in the low 3s and going up to about 4. But it does have some one-level living opportunities within those townhomes, as well as 2 stories for usually what we see is younger couples, divorcees, people who anyone who really desires to have maintenance-free living. So we're excited about that. We think there's a demand for it here in Corcoran. It's not a large project, but I think it'll be a nice mix for the neighborhood. So those are kind of in summary the changes that we've made, and we've had a great relationship with the city of Corcoran here for the last 4 years, and want to continue for another 4 in this particular neighborhood, and look forward to moving ahead with the project. and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for John now at this time? Obviously, he'll stick on and we can ask him questions later. So
I have a question. Oh, sorry, Alan. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, what's the main difference in the townhomes where you've got the large spread and the garage size?
Yeah, they're just different units depending. We have 4 different units that fit into those 4-unit buildings, and we mix and match those. So some of them are just deeper. There might be a little bit of variation in the width. Nothing really in particular that's driving, that size. It was probably more of a design element of how the individual units fit together. Because these have full association maintenance, owners don't have the lawn care and snow removal equipment since that's provided. So they're for townhome. I know you haven't seen a lot of them in your community, but for townhomes, it's a more than adequate sized garage for that demographic.
So are they all? Some of them are less than 2 car.
No, they're all at least 2 cars, so they're all. 20 feet wide by 20 to 22 feet deep. The larger ones are probably closer to 24 feet deep. That's the different size range. It's in the depth, but it's a standard 2-car garage at a minimum.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John, you have something?
Mayor. John, I appreciate you coming today. What's your relationship with Housing First Minnesota and the Minnesota Builders Association?
Yeah, I was on the board as president in 2019 and past president this year. And in about 6 weeks, I'll be no longer affiliated with them.
Okay.
Any other questions for John?
I do. I'm a little confused as to the Planning Commission's recommendation. Did what they recommend eliminate all the 3-stall garages, or did that just happen with some of the models?
Yeah, I think I respond to that. On the villa homes, the 3-car were allowed just because of the design of those particular units. The impacts of the recommendation on the 2-story was it limited the 3-car option on the 55-foot lot. So we essentially would be limited to just 2-car homes under the 2-car garages on the single-family homes under the Planning Commission recommendation, and the 3-car would not be permitted.
And how many homes total, excuse me, were negatively impacted by that recommendation?
Probably an easier way to quantify that would be on the number of lots. There's 46 lots that would be, and just because of how we differentiated the type of homes in the neighborhood, where we've kept some of the association maintenance homes together and the single family homes in another area. So it's 46 lots would be restricted on having the 3-car garage.
What would that do, John, in terms of, in your opinion, attractiveness for the development and potential sales?
Well, I think what it does is diminish the 2-story single family market, where we're trying to attract, the younger families that desire to move into the Rockford School District. I think what it does is takes away an option in the marketplace to appeal to that particular buyer. It's a little more price sensitive to be in the Rockford School District.
Right.
Our homes will still be, in that $400,000 range. Start in the upper 3s, probably deliver around 425. So it's still a reach for a lot of folks, of course, at that price point. But I think it gives us an opportunity to maybe get down to a little bit more affordable for that particular buyer wanting to be in the district.
Would it be possible to pull up the slide again that shows the 3-car garage that is is going to be accepted, but the other 3-car that isn't going to be. Did we have a slide that showed that?
I think the slide shows the difference between a 2-car garage and a 3-car garage.
Yeah, that one.
Oh. So the one at the bottom here, this is accepted. It's not accepted.
No.
Okay.
Excuse me, sorry for interrupting. If I could, and this is what we were trying to illustrate in this particular graphic, is the home on the top complies, that's at 50%. The way the ordinance reads is the home on the bottom does not comply and would be at 77%. I don't know if this particular home is, but in general, that kind of home design. And what we're trying to illustrate is, you know, we understand the objective of the ordinance, which is to try to de-emphasize or have a less garage-dominated streetscape. And what we've tried to do in the design of these homes is build out over the garage to help soften the view of the garage from the street. So, you know, whereas the home on the top is one of ours, but it is garage forward. So I think it tends to be a little more garage dominant than maybe the one on the left, but the one on the right, or excuse me, on the upper side of the graphic complies, the one on the lower side doesn't. And I think we're achieving the same objective, which is to, you know, visually soften the appearance of the garage. We've just tried to do it through the architecture and the style of the home, as opposed to limiting the width on the main level.
Yeah.
Kendra, does the garage on the top actually comply with architectural standards though? It looks like there's brick and the rest is vinyl.
Yeah, I haven't looked at this house. It may not. We do have a requirement for the 3 different materials. It's a little hard to tell if that's shake up above the garage on this or not. So it may or may not comply with the other architectural ones, I think.
Yeah, that's duly noted. We certainly understand the requirements, and we have our basic plans that we have to modify to meet the city's requirement, which includes the mix of materials on the front elevation. The same would hold true on the bottom if we have to add more stone to that, or I think we have the lap siding as well as board and batten on that, maybe shakes, but we'd certainly comply with the standards for all of these elevations in terms of mix of materials.
You know, if I understand the ordinance correctly here about the percentage and as far as the garage goes, to me, when I look at these 2 pictures, the one on the top, which is actually in compliance, feels like the garage is much more dominant than the picture on the bottom, which is not compliant. And I think the architecture of the top one, even though it complies, is much more garage dominant, and the one at the bottom, which doesn't comply, is not nearly as garage dominant. And so I don't know. I think I personally have problems with saying the top one is okay, but the bottom one isn't. To me,
I think one of the things there is the percentage of overall frontage is on the bottom one. It's got, you know, the garage is a lower percentage of overall frontage square footage than the top one, and it becomes less obtrusive. So I think that's why it looks better than, quite frankly.
Yeah, I understand why the top one is compliant. I'm just saying that visually, the bottom one to me looks actually more compliant with the spirit of the ordinance than even the top one does. So I'm not sure.
I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why we would say the bottom one shouldn't be allowed to be built in this.
Is the ordinance the overall percentage of the front elevation, or is it based on the linear footage of the front elevation?
Council member, the code says the garage shall not comprise more than 55% of the viewable ground floor street facing linear building frontage. This standard is based on the garage structure and not on the garage doors only.
Yeah.
And it's only on the first floor footage. It doesn't include second floor.
Yeah.
Any frontage. So, okay, maybe we can.
Considering Tavera, wasn't there some conversation about whether the garage was forward projecting or flush with the rest of the home? There were different standards depending upon how much of the garage was projecting away from the front of the building.
Yeah, we had extensive discussions on that, Jeremy, and we came up with, the garage could be so many feet forward from the entryway. I forget what it is, Kendra, but,
So the code doesn't have a restriction like that. Ravinia specifically does. Tavera does not, and this one does not. Garage forward is okay. It's not okay in Ravinia because the developer specifically said we will not have garage forward units.
Okay. That could be something we want to consider as an ordinance refinement, because this does seem to come up in every proposal. There's these conversations whether we allow an adequate level of flexibility for garage. And in light of these conversations and these images, that I think we all have the same instinctive appeal to the bottom design, that probably should get codified formally so that we don't have to continue to debate it. And I'm sure there's all kinds of staff time that goes into this behind the scenes too.
Yeah, you're right, Jeremy. Absolutely.
I think part of it is the M&I wants to sell homes that sell, and ugly homes don't sell. And I think if we were all picking a house here, we'd pick the bottom one, because no one wants a big, you drive up to somebody's house and all you see is a garage. No one likes that. Yeah. So sometimes I think we ought to defer to the builder unless they're doing crazy things. Yeah. That's how I've always thought about these things.
Is there anything in the PUD that if we approved up to 77% or 76% of front garage space, that says they can't build a single story home in that regard?
Alan, what I would suggest we do on that, I've looked at this and tried to, noodle what could make some sense, but I'm going to suggest as we go forward that we allow up to about, let's say, 77% of frontage, as long as the overall frontage doesn't exceed 40% of the garage doesn't exceed 40% of the overall frontage. So that would take care of, if you had a single story one, you would go back to the original code and you would be kind of self-correcting.
So Mayor, under your recommendation, this lower picture, that would comply with what you're saying?
Correct, yeah. And it's because they have more frontage there, it's on the second story. So and it does what we want it to do. So
right. Yeah, I would agree with that. To me, the eye appeal is much better in the bottom one than the top one. And if I'm driving through a neighborhood and wanting to buy a house, I'm not going to be attracted to the top one nearly as much as the bottom one. Yeah. Maybe the bottom one is out of my price range. I don't know about that, but
and the other thing is the city has a vested interest in wanting, to some extent, or encouraging 3-car garages, because it allows people not to park stuff out on the street, and that's a big plus for the city.
I also think that the 3-car garage will have a tendency to attract more families, people with children, Rockford School District. I mean, that's kind of part and parcel of what is behind all of, maybe the larger overarching picture here.
Yeah, I would not buy a house with a 2-car garage. My house has it, but I've got a 15,000 square foot building and to put stuff in. So
hey, I have an 8-stall garage. So
yeah. Anyway, okay, I guess we have kind of attacked this issue, so let's make sure we've wrung it out. Any other questions or comments on the garage frontage issue? If not, why don't we move on? If there's other general questions, then I want to have Kevin give us a rundown on the watershed issues for the Lima Goods and Foods, so we can put that to bed to rest as well. If there's no other general questions, why don't we move back to the water issue, and kind of get that out of the way if that works for everybody.
The only other question I had was with regards to the elevations on the townhomes. It came out in Planning Commission that was suggested that, and it's in the actual ordinance resolution about having additional features on those elevations, but I believe they were strongly suggesting that they incorporate more than just one of those features. would it be possible to change the resolution to say a minimum of 2? And we can get to it when we go to the resolution. It might be easier to talk about it that way.
Yeah, so what you're suggesting, Alex, is should consider there's a specific items in the resolution that would address having more, requiring at least 2 features on the back elevation as example.
Right, because I mean, what they could do is they could go with the simplest one, which is just widening the trim around windows, and it might not solve the issue of the overall elevation. So
okay, why don't we, when we get to that, you can maybe call out the exact item in the resolution. Sure. We can attack the verbiage on that. And see if we get consensus. I think that makes sense. I agree. We're looking for variety there, so let's not be overbearing, but let's get some variety.
Yeah.
The variety should be noticeable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As opposed to what you see in a lot of townhomes, and you see the backside of them. Okay, Kevin, or Brad, do you want Kevin to address all the watershed issues?
Yeah, Kevin, if you can maybe give an overview of the process and discussions, and I know Kent's on the line too if you want to defer to him, but Kevin, I'll turn it over to you to kind of give an overview of the process moving forward if the council approves the item tonight.
Yeah, and I think the goal of this discussion should be to really, one of them should be to specifically answer Karen's question about what kind of assurances do they get that they're going to get cooperation after this goes from the council. So if we can do that as part of the discussion, Kevin, that would be great.
Sure, I'll do my best, and then if I don't answer it, please ask the question in more detail. So thank you, Mayor and Council. Some of what I'm going to quickly go through here was mentioned by the developer as well as the existing residents, but back in 2014, through the previous approval, there was a feasibility study and conversations and approvals that basically conditioned the offsite stormwater management to be dealt with. And it was at that point in the process, it was just an identification, right? This is a concern. There's an existing problem on the north side. It should be factored into the development. So that condition was maintained. That condition is in this current approval. It is a condition primarily because there's a lot of decisions that are outside of our control. There are a lot of agencies in the stretch between the north property line of the development and County Road 116 that may or may not be permittable. So we are working through that process with the applicant. The applicant has spent a fair amount of resources to date investigating this. They have, shared some of those alternatives with the landowners in the city. That's the alternative that at this point they're recommending. That's not set in stone. As part of the city's review process, we will consider other alternatives such as a pipe or anything else that comes up through our engineering review. Additionally, we have provided a condition that states basically that we will complete an assessment of the South Fork of Rush Creek, which is, it was brought up by resident Foy, that he was concerned that you can't just do a ditch to his, private drive, that you have to consider everything to the kind of north and east. And we have that assessment that we will complete with the developer and our staff. Again, the outcome of that assessment may be controlled by agencies outside of our, beyond our control. So Army Corps could have a say in it. Elm Creek could have a say in it. The Bowser could have a say in it in terms of what's a delineated wetland and are we impacting that. So we can't commit to any of that right now. What we can commit to is that as a condition of approval that they evaluate that. And primary, the biggest assurance that I can point you to is that we've required a letter of credit from the developer specifically for this item in the amount of $150,000. In addition to taking some engineering escrow above it beyond the normal that we would do, because we know this is a design that has to be evaluated. So that's a commitment that they have to make to kind of continue this evaluation. One thing of note is that when the watershed reviews developments like this, they focus on the rate of discharge and not minimizing that or making it less. That rate of discharge is on the property line, basically the north property line of the development or the south property line of Miss Lyman Good's property. They don't look beyond the property as part of their review. The city of Corcoran, going back to 2014, is looking beyond that because there is an existing concern, and the developer in good faith has been pursuing that. So that's really a quick and dirty, and I guess I'll turn it back to you guys if you have any follow-up questions on that or if I missed something.
I just have a real quick question, and that is, do the property owners to the north, do they have an ability to have a voice with the watershed people or all these other agencies that make decisions in all of this?
I mean, it's a public meeting. They can certainly, we can connect them to the staff at the watershed. And the watershed is bound by the rules. So they will kind of walk through the concerns and what the rules are and why they meet the rules and don't meet the rules. And they can attend the meeting and have a say at the meeting. But really, just like us, there has to be a justification for it. So they have a say like this process, but yeah,
but it's not like a closed meeting kind of behind closed doors. I mean, it's still public. Yeah, they can still, okay.
Yep.
It's not necessarily a public meeting like that. It's a meeting with the water commissioners, and people can speak about their situation, but it's not a back and forth. The homeowners get involved, and I don't mean to cut you off or be disrespectful, Kevin, but it's a process by which the owners get to say some things, but It's not, and the builder, who is the person who is applying, will get to act interactively with the watershed, but the other parties that are impacted, they're not a part of that. They only can just speak their mind about it. So I just want to lay out what those meetings are like, just to be clear that they're not considered stakeholders. They're only commenters during the watershed meeting.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, John.
Yeah, and if that wasn't clear, I misspoke. The conversations I was alluding to are on a staff level before the reports are done. A lot of times those happen, but John's correct. At the meeting, it's more as how he described it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Kevin?
So it sounds like, Kevin, the specifics of the plan can't be nailed down because we haven't gotten to that part of the process quite yet. What about the questions that David posed about who is responsible for the maintenance of the system? Is that something that the HOA will be responsible for maintaining if there's a ditch structure? Would the landowners who own those parcels at the time be responsible for it? Is the city responsible for that? How is that controlled over the next 50 years?
That's a good question. Typically, the on-site stormwater management, so the stuff internal to the site, we condition to the HOA. So our HOA at Ravinia, at this site, Rush Creek Reserve, typically the on-site responsibilities fall with the HOA. We have, to my knowledge, not conditioned any off-site maintenance on someone else's property as part of a development agreement. The question comes up often, why is the city not doing more to help with some of the stuff? We've relied on the current landowners being responsible to maintain what drains across their property. There was existing drainage pattern there before. There's an existing drainage pattern there now. That question comes up often, but we haven't formally tied it to a development agreement.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Mm-hmm.
Suppose the HOA has an agreement to clean up and maintain the drainage ditches and the holding ponds. Is it a civil penalty if they don't keep them, or is it a In other words, would Ms. Lyman Good and Mr. Foy have to sue the homeowners association to have them clean it up? Or would the city step in and say, you're violating code of keeping these waterways clean and maintained for silt?
I think it kind of depends on when a potential incident happens. If it's during the development process and it's in a phase of that process, we have mechanisms in place to kind of coordinate that. If it's all accepted and we're moved on and there's some issue 20 years down the line, then it probably becomes a private property dispute. But I don't know if Kendra, if you'd have any more knowledge on that, but that's how I would understand it.
Well, I think what I would say is the city acquires a drainage and utility easement over the improvements on MI's property. And as part of that, we also have a stormwater maintenance agreement that says the developer will maintain those stormwater ponds. And in those maintenance agreements, it does provide rights for the city if the developer fails to maintain those stormwater improvements. The city can put them on notice and then go out and correct the problem and bill that back to the developer. I don't believe, quickly looking at it, I don't believe we have a civil penalty in that agreement, but we have a means to make the correction and have the developer pay for it. I don't know that legally we could make this developer or any developer maintain something on someone else's private property, even if we have a drainage and utility easement. So that's a little bit different, but certainly on site we have the tools to correct a problem.
Yeah, I'm not asking about whether we could enforce something on the property of the homeowners to the north. I'm just being specific, and sort of leading me to think that we have to get it right on the front end, rather than defaulting to, well, let's leave it at the hands of the watershed, and then it seems like then the homeowners to the north lose their voice that they could potentially have on passing this through council. That's not my final, but it seems like with the watershed that it's a significant issue.
Right, and in the review we received, it does say that the applicant is required to comply with all local watershed and state stormwater regulations, which would protect adjacent landowners. So I mean, I walked the property with both Karen and David. I think all that they're really wanting is some assurances that they are going to be protected. And I would like to just see something put into our approval process, because I think everybody's excited about this development and are very positive about it. Even Karen and David are positive about it. They're not against this development. But if the conveyance of this water is going to basically affect the neighbors, even putting a ditch through their yard, which I think they would be open to on their property line, as long as it was a direct line to the creek rather than taking a left-hand turn and what have you. And it might even be nice if the existing ditches could be cleaned out as maybe a show of appreciation for some of this, but I'm not sure that that can be part of this or not. But I think that if there was some way for us to put into our approval process that the neighbors to the north are going to, their concerns are going to be not only taken into consideration, but their property will be protected. And I think there needs to be a
Brian, that's already in the agreement, because they're protected by the state laws and the watershed laws.
Okay, so that's all.
The developer cannot increase the rate of flow of water across their property. I mean, and that's anytime you have a development, you're impacting neighbors with water, and that's there's pretty effective laws that are in place right now that take care of that. that maybe don't make everybody happy all the time, but
Sure.
I don't think we can get in here and engineer a project. It's not just on our purview, and I think to have to say something that we know that the neighbors are going to be really happy when this is all done, I think there's no way we can confirm that. But to say that we know that the neighbors will be treated according to the law, that's in the agreement already.
Okay, as long as something is stated that the adjacent neighbors are going to be protected with this.
Yeah, well, it is. They have to. It's stated they have to comply with the laws and regulations. Right. And
right.
we've got as Kevin said, we've got a significant escrow
right
back to make sure this happens. So
right.
I think to the extent that we can protect the people from it, I think I'm pretty comfortable it's being done.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that this day and age, the mistrust level is at an all-time high with everything. Yep. I mean, not just government; it's everywhere, right? And so you try to do your best to cover, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and so forth. At the end of the day, I want to make sure neighbors who've lived in our community for over 30 years, are protected to the best of our ability. That's all.
And unlike the past, the Corcoran now is a local government unit for the watershed issues, which wasn't the case when Ravinia came in. So we're plugged into this at the front end. We're involved in it at the front end.
Sure.
When Ravinia came in, it was our hands were totally off of it. We had nothing to do with it, which is changed now. It's different.
Well, can I speak to Brian's comment?
Sure.
This particular project was approved 6 years ago.
Right.
And I would, the buck stops with the city council in this city. And I would rather see, in a dispute like we have today, to have both sides have a say. And the way we do that is to get the watershed approval, and everybody gets to be taken along in that process. And if we have to delay it one meeting until that gets done, it shouldn't matter that much if we approve it, then the watershed approves it, or we have the watershed approve it and then us. It's all going to happen in a matter of 2 meetings. So if it's all the same to me, I would rather view the proposal, talk about the proposal, know that if it happens to hinge on the watershed, we're not dummies on the council. We all are educated. We're not water experts, but sometimes we have overridden engineers and experts for good reason when we've passed or not passed pretty big projects in our town. So I guess we'll vote on it, but as far as
we're not
those things,
we're not experts on it, and the further you get into the project, the more the developers have to spend on these projects. And the process we have right now is the process we have, and I'm not favorable at all to changing our overall process of how we deal with projects. I think that's to do that on the fly like this would be irresponsible in my opinion. So I don't support that at all.
I'm perfectly fine with moving forward as long as we are all in agreement and it's in the record that the adjacent landowners are going to be protected based on the requirements of not only the local but watershed and state stormwater regulations, and I'm fine with that.
And I think that's certainly what I heard Mr. Foy state was he wanted to be on record, so he could refer back to this meeting in the future and get support from the city. And I think everybody's all in on that. I don't think that's.
And I think at this juncture, that's all we can really do at this point. And that's fine.
Can I ask Kevin or Kendra, with regards to item 40 in the resolution where it talks about drainage and stormwater management, what's meant by the last sentence in there? Offsite stormwater conveyance will be constructed at the developer's expense based on wetland and watershed approvals and northerly property owners providing easements. Can you talk about those last 5 words?
At this time, we don't have the final alignment. And so when the Foys and the Lyman Goods talk about a straight shot, it's not clear that the existing drainage and utility easements that were provided as part of their subdivision would allow that. So if the final design required something outside of an easement that exists today, then they would need to provide that easement.
Okay, so if the watershed comes back and said we have to make some sort of change.
Yeah, I suspect if that were happening, it would be less from the watershed and more from
engineering
and Lyman Goods, because there's a lot of easement up there, and that easement covers the existing, we believe, covers the existing ditch. But I think that, and Kevin, if you have more to add there, that was just to protect that. We don't want to do a design and then not be able to do it because the existing landowners don't have easements that allow us to do the work.
Okay, so there's currently an easement right now.
Yes.
Okay.
There's easements. We just don't know if they're in the right spot, but there's there's a large easement there currently, and it's likely that it's in there, but there's always the one off that it's not. So that's just kind of above and beyond catch-all that we threw in there. But
so if for example the easement isn't in the correct spot, that gives Mr. Foy and Ms. Lyman Good, it gives them an opportunity for negotiation because they would have to renegotiate the easement, correct?
Potentially, but I guess I just want to emphasize that if we detach this condition, this offsite condition, if we detached it and the developer submitted their stormwater management plan to the watershed, they would get approvals if they matched rates without any of this work to the north.
Okay.
So the work improvements to the north that was part of the feasibility report in 2014 and have been carried forward and disclosed with MI really are nothing to do with the watershed rules. They're City of Corcoran rules, or conditions that we're applying.
And they're conditions that are there to help the neighbors to the north. So.
Specifically to help the neighbors to the north. Now, when we go to look at that design, we potentially are going to be pulled back into the watershed's review because they're part of the TEP on all these, agencies that have review in these sensitive areas. Floodplain areas are sensitive and get more review. So we could come up with a plan, then we have to bring that specific plan through all their approval processes. But to be clear, if we didn't have this, they would be able to get a watershed approval only. So there's overlapping approvals. So just maybe this will help. So when we're to the point where we've gotten this far, we've looked at their preliminary modeling, we've really fine-tuned their existing conditions model, which is very important to know what the problems are. The applicants developed a grading plan and some preliminary offsite stuff. That still comes through our engineering consultants for a fairly thorough review. Again, this is one alternative. It could change. Once we feel comfortable with the grading plan and where everything sits, then we sign off on the watershed reviewing it. So we basically get a good whack at it to make sure that we like everything that's going on. Then the watershed will look at it, give their approvals, and then I'll go kind of simultaneous with our remaining approvals. That process, especially due to some of these complexities on the offsite end, aren't going to happen in a month or two. They're going to carry into the spring of this year. They won't be grading until May, maybe they get a lucky spring. So there's appropriate time. This is common to development when we have these complex offsite scenarios. So I don't want to, the watershed plays a role, but this specific conversation is really triggered by our conditions we set in 2014.
Okay, and then I had a question. Mr. Foy brought up a point about future landowners and the ability to have an impact if they wanted to change that ditch. I gotta imagine that's pretty hard to write into some type of resolution now, or even consider from an engineering standpoint. it would be almost impossible to do something to that effect, wouldn't it?
Well, especially since we're only helping to facilitate that properties to the north issues, we're not
Right.
taking on that job. So it's
We can't foresee what a future landowner in one of those
Not at all.
properties would want. And okay. And
I-
then
I-
Yeah, to answer your question I mean, they would have to then develop their own stormwater management plan. So they would basically accept that as an existing condition, and then they would have to go through the development process to modify it. So we're not placing a covenant on it or anything like that. So they would just have to build that into their plan. Again, it's floodplain, so there's limitations that are there today that there would be after this project. Floodplain has limitations. So, yes, in short, it's complicated to do something like that.
okay. We've talked a lot about water coming off the property, but there's also a creek that runs onto the property, correct? From the southeast. Does this plan
Correct.
impact that at all? Does it impede that water from entering the property?
No, it has to balance that. So the same as when they're looking at their discharge, they can't block water from coming on the upstream side. So that's part of the whole stormwater management plan and modeling that gets factored in. So
Okay.
that's really an example of why the water just kind of has to follow that existing drainage pattern. And that's why the watershed looks at the point of release, right? It says, okay, it was leaving your site at this point. It can leave your site at this point. It just can't increase rate.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
okay. Any other comments, questions? I guess at this time, why don't we look at, are there any specific, Alan has identified item 40. I've identified, or we've all identified item 10C, which is a garage frontage. Are there any other of the issues that, the items that people would want to address?
I think it was 10F.
10F?
That talks about the elevation on the townhomes, on the back of the townhomes.
I guess I'm looking at 10. Oh, okay, the 10. Okay, what was you had something on 40. Oh, the 40 was the
40 was just my question.
there's a
with
question on
regards-
that. Okay, I got you. 10F. Yep. Okay. Okay, so are there any other specific issues that people would like to see addressed?
So I had a suggestion for resolution 40. I understand we can't dictate the specific design, and we can't dictate that the HOA or another party would maintain whatever structure is created. Maybe this is redundant, but can we look at making sure that if whatever structural design is put in place is not adequate, that we explicitly state who is responsible for correcting it, and making sure that we do end up with a system that functions the way it's intended, where we're not adding more water to those northerly properties than they currently get.
Well, I think we would have to approve anything now based on current engineering that says what's adequate. To say what's adequate in the future would be hard to
I'm not sure I understand,
then,
Jeremy. The absolute requirement is that they have to meet certain requirements that they cannot increase the flow of water going off of their property. They've just got to do that. All the powers will come down on them if they don't. So the engineers will look at it and evaluate whether the design accommodates that. So
I guess my question is, if it's understanding that all of these people are intelligent, educated, and well-meaning, they still can make mistakes.
Sure.
If they end up being wrong, do we not need to have something like that to make sure that the developer will have to redress the issue?
I would think they would go after, they would be within their right to sue the engineering firms that signed off on the current engineering.
It's hard to,
their liability insurance would cover them in any lawsuit.
I can't imagine how we could get in the middle of that. I think there are recourses for anybody for issues like that.
That's why we got to do our homework. Yeah, I said when there are already legal constructs on how to handle issues, it's hard for a city ordinance to stand in the way of that.
So it sounds like there's
why
already a mechanism and we don't need to do anything to address it.
Right.
we just got to make sure it's right on the front end as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Any items that people want addressed? I'm going to propose that we, that on 10C, we change that to the garage frontage can be up to 77%. As long as the overall percentage of garage frontage doesn't exceed 40% of all the frontage of the, however that should be worded, Kendra.
Okay.
And Alan, what did you want to do on 10F?
Well, it said the city would consider the following to address the spirit of the ordinance. It would be nice to have this state something to the effect of city would consider with a minimum of 2 items at the developer's discretion.
How about if we said that on that sentence, the city would consider the addition of 2 or more of the following to address the spirit of the ordinance?
That sounds good.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Kendra, would the 40% overall be in conflict with anything else? So for example, does the developer have a 2-stall or not a 2-story, that the 40% would be a problem?
What I have written now, let's listen and see. I think what I have is PUD flexibility is provided to allow the face of the garage to exceed 55% of the ground floor street facing linear building frontage and allow up to 77% for detached single family homes, as long as the garage coverage does not exceed 40% of the total street facing building frontage. So I think that 2-car garage is limited to the 55%.
Okay.
Does that sound like what you were trying to get to, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Mayor, this is Dean Jacobs.
Yes, Dean.
Can I just maybe bring, I just got a question then regarding 10C. So if you look at the photograph or the slide that had the 2 pictures, I think as I looked at it, I would agree with most people that the bottom photo, the 2-story, was much more appealing than the top one. And when we talk now about putting a percentage on this garage ratio, when you look at the top photo, Kendra, would we be counting then as part of the frontage, the gable above the garage? And I want to draw this distinction. What makes the bottom picture look much more feasible in this current situation is because if you look at everything above the garages, that's livable second floor area. There are windows there. And when you look at the top one, well, are we going to count the gable above the garage door as part of that ratio? That's not a living space. And so what the builder could do, if you're going to count that as part of that ratio, well, you could squeeze that house together. You know, you lose a couple of windows in that 2-story section, and you still qualify then because you're under the 40%. Does that make sense?
It does, Dean, but first of all, we're kind of looking at policy here. And the other thing is that, builders aren't going to do something that's make their house look ugly. That's kind of a premise that I certainly have, and I'm assuming everybody has. So there's probably ways they can wiggle around a lot of things or do things, but they're going to try and come up with an attractive house. I mean, that's what their goal is. So.
Okay. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other items?
I wanted to call out the garage footprint requirements, the flexibility they're asking for there. I'd just like to make sure that people have enough space that they can park their cars and have bikes and things in their garages as well. I used to live in a townhome development, and there were lots of cases where people, even though they didn't have to garden or take care of sidewalks and so on, they would still have bikes and wagons and things end up parking in their driveways because they didn't have space for everything. So I would be open to a modification to maintain the minimum standards for garage sizes.
I'm sorry, I guess I'm not sure what your point is, Jeremy.
I'm looking to see whether we can get additional rationale. The smallest garage sizes that were indicated in the packet were, I think, 368 square feet, which is just about 20 by 20 in a square pattern at least. So if you envision trying to park 2 cars in a space like that, if anybody has anything else they want to put in that garage, they'd have to park a car in the driveway instead.
Okay. And so you'd like to do what in order to eliminate that as an issue?
Increase that size?
I would like to maintain the previous garage size requirements.
What's the minimum of the previous one you're talking about, Jerry?
I believe it was 440 square feet.
Okay.
The minimum garage size varies on whether it has a basement in the unit or not. So there's a couple different numbers, and that is in the staff report on page 10. For 440, if it has a basement, is the minimum size required. And if it does not have a basement, the minimum garage size is
540.
Right.
So doesn't that address your or at least attempt to address your issue, Jeremy?
That would, yeah. If we just maintain the existing garage size requirements, I'd be perfectly happy.
Yeah, I would be in agreement with that.
So by eliminating the flexibility in 10E, they will have to provide a different product type. This product cannot work.
Which product is that?
The townhouse project that they've proposed cannot work with those garage sizes. They will have to redesign that. Just to be clear, I mean, it's not as simple as adding some trim on the back of the building. It's a different product.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. Right now they want a 440 square foot garage.
No, they want garages, and they outlined it on an exhibit that they provided because it does vary a little bit on the product type. But the smallest garage that they're proposing is 458 on the Nokomis units, 433 on the Hiawatha units, and 386 on the Vermilion and Minnehaha units.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all townhomes.
Right. So and I won't remember, but I think the Nokomis is one of the end units, and the other ones which do not comply are the other interior and end units.
Okay.
You can make a townhouse with just Nokomis units because it won't fit on the lot, I don't believe.
Okay.
So I guess I don't support forcing them to go totally different products at this stage.
Right.
The other thing is, I think the homeowners associations will have codicils and everything else in place that don't allow you to park junk out on the driveways. We don't allow cars parked in the driveways. Is that not true?
Well, I think that's maybe a more effective way to address the concern about outside storage is to simply require the HOA to prohibit outside overnight parking of vehicles or storage of equipment or something to that effect. I mean, John's still on the line. He can talk about exactly what they typically do for the HOAs, but that is something I've seen in other townhomes is to say cities requiring the HOA to prohibit overnight parking in the driveway. If you wanted to do that. I mean, I park in my driveway sometimes, but.
I wouldn't go to that extent, personally, no.
Mayor and council, if it's helpful, I have one of those small 20 by 20 foot garages that is 2 cars, 2 kayaks, 3 bikes, little shop, little work area. It's tight. Oh, a snowblower, lawnmower. So I'm just saying it's possible to live the way I do, and it's okay.
I'd like to see a photo of that, Brad.
Anyway.
A good lesson and for me in how to arrange things, I'm sure. Okay, so are we okay just leaving it as is?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
those small garages are going to be in the center units anyways. And I wouldn't be surprised if the vast majority of the people who purchase them might be single mothers or people like, some to that effect, and probably 1-car owners and whatever. So.
Well, also it probably, I would guess having smaller garages keeps the cost down to some extent too.
It does too. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any other items? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2020-87 with the modification to item 10C and 10F as discussed.
Do we get to have a discussion period too?
Yeah, we can do it under motion.
Okay, so moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, now we'll have a discussion period. Is there any discussion?
I would like to bring something up. Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
Yep, you are.
Okay. I asked first off, I don't really get into nitpicking neighborhoods and houses and siding and windows and that kind of stuff. I feel like I'm not going to live there. I'm not going to see it from the road. It doesn't impact me that much. That's generally where I stand on these things. And actually, I like John personally. He handles things so well and is very much a gentleman. And has built nice places here. But I'm going to call you on the carpet, John, for your association with the Minnesota Builders Association and Minnesota Housing First. Because every article that has been written in the Star Tribune and articles about the cost of building in Corcoran has been written by your organization, ghostwritten for other reporters as studies on costs of houses for low income housing. And it's, to me, they're horrible studies, and they nitpick and they pull everything out of context that's been said in our townhouse or in our meetings here on council. It's actually shameful the way you hitch your wagons to the low income housing problem we have in Minnesota, because your studies go, if Corcoran didn't charge so much to build, housing wouldn't be so expensive. And the bills that have been written specifically targeting Corcoran were written by your organizations, not necessarily to improve housing for low-income people, but to decrease the cost of building in Corcoran. And it kind of chaps my ass that you do it. I think it's disgusting.
Okay.
And Ron, I get to speak. I was elected
You get to
too.
speak, but you have to stay on subject, John.
I am on
so
subject.
Limit yourself here a little bit, because
It's a subject
this has nothing to do with this project.
It sure does. It creates distrust for this builder and me. And I don't consider I don't want to approve this project without all the I's being dotted and T's being crossed, because of the relationship has not been great with this builder. And I don't trust that they're going to do the right thing in this circumstance. That's why I'm going to ask that we put off our vote until later. I would ask that the issue with the homeowners to the north, I can't vote against this project, even though, because I don't like some of the things that have been said about it by John's organization. That's not good. I can't do that. But I can make sure the I's are crossed. And I want to see what is the solution of the watershed issues on the north before I approve the project.
Okay, well, I don't support changing the process of how we do projects in Corcoran based on your animosity towards a developer or an organization. So
I'm just stating facts.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Well, we have it written in the resolution, right? That has to be resolved prior to any permits are being issued.
we're going above and beyond what we would normally do or most cities would do for a project like this. And I think it's covered fairly well. And again, legally, they can't infringe on the neighbors on their neighbors with water. There's all kinds of legal precedents for that. And it's pretty firmly in place. I'm sure they will stay engaged in the process as we move forward. And I would encourage them to, and I would assume that the council will support their engagement. So.
I'd like to just go back to what is stated, and it's the applicant is required to comply with all local and watershed and state stormwater regulations, which would protect the adjacent landowners. So if the applicant is required to do that, local, which is us, watershed and state stormwater regulations, I think that really protects the neighbors to the north. I believe Karen and David would be more than happy with that being part of the record, and their concerns are going to be alleviated by just that one statement.
And I think the future council needs to take ownership of maintaining these ditches and setting a budget to do so in the future. So.
I wouldn't
Mr.
disagree
Mayor.
with that. And I think it's but setting the budget is the issue. So that's a very expensive project issue.
Can I ask Mr. Mayor that that I ask for this to be approved after the watershed, and if that does not get approved by a council, then I will be able to vote for the project rather than, and it'll be specific to why I voted against it. So I'd like to put forth a motion that we wait until after the.
Okay, for this minute, I'll table the existing motion and entertain your motion, John.
I would like to put forth the motion that we wait until the watershed approval is done before we approve Mr. Mayor's motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, we would either need to vote on the motion or amend the motion that's in front of us.
Well, John's asking for a totally different motion. He's not asking for an amendment to the motion.
We have to act on this motion before we act on a new motion. So you can see Bottom made the motion, Lowther second. So this motion either has to be acted on, removed, or amended before we have a whole new motion to come forward.
I wasn't seconding John's motion. I actually had a question. That's why I was raising my hand here. So I don't know if that was interpreted as me seconding the motion, but I'd like to I don't know if this is proper procedure here, but I'd like Brad, maybe for you to weigh in on, the process here of some of these.
Hold on a second. Let's get ourselves squared away. Brad, do we have an active motion that's been seconded on the table right now?
So I had a motion, my notes, I had motion by Bottom, seconded by Lowther. If Lowther says he did not.
I seconded it.
I'm sorry, my notes are wrong then. So second by Nichols, my apologies. That is an active motion that has to be either acted on, amended, or retracted by those who made and seconded the motion.
Can I rescind the motion?
You got me confused. So is the original motion to approve the resolution as amended, or are we?
Yes.
That was the original motion, yes.
Okay. So now we're back to 0 on the table.
I'm rescinding the motion.
Typically, the person seconding would have to agree to rescind. And I'm not an expert on Robert rules, but that's been kind of the friendly way we've gone about it in the past, that if someone makes the motion, the person who seconds is willing to also rescind the motion for the purpose of the discussion, but I'm not an expert on Robert rules.
I haven't gotten my rule book yet, so I'm not an expert on it either.
John's got a pamphlet.
I have it with me.
So
I don't want to take more time. If you rescind it, then we can vote on my new resolution, which would be.
We can look and see if we have a second for that.
Yes, thank you, Ron.
Okay. So if John is asking me to rescind my second, I will rescind my second.
Okay, now, John, you have a motion you'd like to put forward?
I would like to make a motion that we wait until the results of the watershed before approving this Rush Creek Preserve final plat with the adjustments.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay, any discussion?
So I have a question. If we wait, what is the timing of the watershed decision, and are we tied to an approval decision by state law? I mean, are we will we be within that time frame for the next meeting?
No. So Mayor and Council, as was brought up before, this will take months to go through.
It's not an option.
We are in a 60-day time period. We could ask for another, 60-day extension. But essentially, if we don't act on it within the time frame, it's approved. So Kendra, can you talk to the time frame we're working on right now?
Yes, the state law gives us 60 days to review and act on a final plat. The 60 days expires on December 11th for this application. And certainly we can ask the developer to extend 60 days, but they're under no obligation to do so.
This is considered a completed final app with things left undone.
Yeah, this would be horrible process if we do this, and I can't express how strongly I oppose this.
Kendra,
anyway, any further discussion?
Well, can I piggyback off that question? Kendra, is it 60 days only on the final plot, or is it 60 days on the final PUD as well?
So the law is 60 days on the final plat. The PUD final plan is a 120-day review, but our code ties them together and says they both have to be approved together.
Okay, so if we would have missed that deadline, what they presented without modification would be approved by default.
Yes, with no conditions.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I could. I
Okay,
want the decision-making process within the city council.
All in favor of the motion that's on the table signify by saying aye. Thomas, nay. Bodema?
I'm gonna have to say nay because of the automatic approval.
Okay. Lothar?
Nay.
Nichols?
Nay.
And Schultz?
Nay.
Okay. Okay, now I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-87 as presented with the modifications to 10C and 10F as discussed.
So moved.
I'll second it, Lothar.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Lothar?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
And Bodema?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we go to Resolution 2020-88, which is the resolution that approves the, let me get the wordage correctly here. Do you have the verbiage for that so I say it properly?
Yes.
Kendra? I don't have page 1 of that. Okay, here it is. It's approving the final plat and development contract for Rush Creek Reserve for MI Homes. So do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
I'll second it, Lothar.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bodema?
Aye.
Lothar?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
And Schultz?
Aye.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for a hearty discussion. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 9B, which is a Ravinia 15th edition.
The final edition of Ravinia. This is also a final development plan and final plat. And this is for 44 single-family homes. It's generally consistent with the Ravinia rules, except for 2 changes. They did remove one cul-de-sac, and I'll show you where that is, which resulted in the addition of 1 lot, and the removal of a landscape island, which was coming off of Gleason. The Planning Commission reviewed this on November 5th and voted 4-0 to recommend approval. Next slide. Which I think is the comparison. No, it's not the comparison, but this is Gleason Parkway on the south, which is a city project. We're working to extend that out to 116. To the north of this, there are some single family homes that were in a previous phase, and then north of that is the large open space park that was deeded with this project. And so the next slide, I think, is the comparison. Yes. So the purple is the location of the 15th edition. You can see the entire Ravinia development, except the portion of the park, which is cut off on the north there. But this project was 15 phases, originally approved back in 2013 with the preliminary plat. Next slide. And the cul-de-sac island that was removed was on that easternmost street. There was a little pimple cul-de-sac island like the one we see in the southwest corner. That was removed, and actually Public Works supports that. It's easier for them to plow without the cul-de-sac and the cul-de-sac island, so staff does support that change, even though it does result in one additional lot. Next slide. So you can see the comparison of the original plan on the left with that cul-de-sac island and the new plan on the right with the elimination. And then at the entrance to this portion of the development off Gleason Parkway, originally that street had a landscaped island, and it is not currently proposed. And once again, the HOA would maintain it, but it's still something for Public Works to deal with. So we support the change to eliminate that island or reduce the width of the right-of-way. In talking with the applicant, it's our understanding that they're going to eliminate the island and reduce the right-of-way. Next slide. And this is the final plat for the 15th edition. Again, just matches that master plan. Next slide. Just a summary of how we got to where we are. There have been 15 phases, as some of you know. There were 2 chunks of land added to the original area of the development in the 8th edition and the 11th edition, which added 11 acres and increased the units from 426 to 485. This is the final phase of the project with a total units when it's completed of 485 units. Next slide. Again, just comparing the final approved plan from 2014 with where we are today. And both of the additions were on the east side of the project. The yellow area on the north east corner was the 8th edition. And then south of the purple blob down there is the 11th edition. Those were the 2 pieces that were added into the development. Next slide. And so we recommend that you move to adopt Resolution 2020-89, approving the final PUD plan, and Resolution 2020-90, approving the final plat as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay, any question for Kendra? Any comments, questions, general discussion?
No.
I don't have anything.
Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-89, the final PDU plan.
So moved. Bottom
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bodema.
Aye.
Lothar. Lothar, your mute's on.
I was coughing, sorry. Aye.
And Nichols.
Aye.
And Schultz.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-90, which is the final plat for Ravinia 15th edition.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Lothar.
Aye.
Bodema.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
And Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kendra.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify who made the motion and who was the second there?
I was second.
And who made the motion?
Nichols.
That was me.
Nichols? Okay, that's what I thought.
Thank you.
Okay, item 9C, which is a preliminary plat for Tesmer and Weber properties.
Yes, this is a small rural subdivision. Next slide. For Tesmer and Weber, they're requesting approval to create 3 lots and 1 outlot from 2 existing lots. The properties are guided and zoned rural residential. The council approved a wetland waiver for the Weber property, the east side of the property. But the west side of the property did require a wetland delineation, and that was completed. The Planning Commission reviewed this on November 5th and voted 4-0 to recommend approval. Next slide. And the highlighted portion is the existing Tesmer parcel, and then the farmed piece to the southeast of that is the Weber parcel. And as part of this plat, they're going to redo that common lot line, and the Tesmers will create some buildable lots. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that the eastern portion is an outlot that will be retained by the Webers. And then you've got the 2 vacant buildable lots. And then as you move west, the largest lot is the existing Tesmer farmstead that will remain. Next slide. And all of the lots will have access off of Tesmer Road. No access will be allowed off of County Road 50. The county did ask for some additional County Road
50.
19.
When did they move that?
19 was redone a few years ago, and the county acquired right-of-way. They've asked for potentially some more right-of-way from the Weber property at Tesmer and 19, as has been the council policy. Because that parcel is an outlot, we are not requiring additional right-of-way at this time, and would defer that to a later discussion if and when Outlot A ever developed. But additional right-of-way is being deeded for Tesmer Road where the property is being platted. The wetland buffer requirements are not shown correctly on the plans yet, so we've included conditions to require compliance with the wetland buffers, wetland buffer signs, and wetland setbacks to be shown on the plans when the final plat is submitted. There is a well and septic that will serve the lots, and Hennepin County has given preliminary approval for those septic locations. Next slide. There are 8 development rights for this property, and we've simply asked where the 4 remaining development rights will be assigned, and we asked the landowners to provide a letter that goes in the file. That's our standard operating procedure. We assume they'll be assigned to the Weber parcel, although the Tesmer parcel potentially could take one and do a future subdivision. But that's been a condition, that's a standard condition for rural subdivisions. Next slide. And so we do recommend that you move to adopt Resolution 2020-91, approving the preliminary plat for Tesmer Edition as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay. Any questions for Kendra?
Yeah, I have a question with regards to the current development rights and how they will work with this property, because we've got 2 different landowners and we're talking about where the development rights land.
Mm-hmm.
So how many development rights does each landowner have currently on their parcel? And then how is it working that one may get more or less?
So the whole 80 was owned by the Tesmers.
Mm-hmm.
And a handful of years ago, they split it and sold a portion to the Webers. And I haven't been in City Hall and I don't have access to the City Hall files, but at the time they split that 80 into 2 parcels, they assigned the development rights. I think it was that Weber took 1 and Tesmers took the remaining 7.
Okay.
And so that they could do this in the future. And so now the question is, are the Tesmers going to, and Weber says he intends to continue farming, so he wasn't at the time the last subdivision came in interested in additional development rights. So the reason we ask those two landowners who are the two applicants is we don't need to get involved in that. They just need to tell us how they want to assign those 4 remaining development rights. 1 will be assigned to each of the lots and to the outlot that uses 4. And so there's 4 remaining.
So how can any of those 4 go to Weber in that regard? Isn't that a transfer?
No. So
that's what confuses me in this, is how Weber would get more rights by selling a portion of his land and redistributing the lot line.
I feel like we've had this conversation a few times, and eventually I'm going to be able to explain it to you in a way.
And it ties into the email exchange we had with regards to.
So, Jess, can you go to the existing aerial, and maybe this will help. I'll try it again.
Because people get confused about this, not just me. So.
Mm-hmm. Jess, are you there? Well, anyway, there's 2 existing parcels today.
Yep.
There's the Tesmer parcel and the Weber parcel. And I think, although I cannot be sure, and I don't have access to the files, but I think how it was Tesmer kept 7 and Weber took 1 when he bought the property. My recollection is that he said, I'm not intending to develop so that I don't need extra development rights. Yes, I'm looking at the development rights map, and that is correct. Tesmer's had 7 and Weber had 1. And if you remember that location map, which is in your packet, you see those 2 parcels. When they come in together, like they did now, those 2 parcels, as part of a plat, get mushed into 1 parcel.
Okay, so the parcels are combined under a single owner, and then they're split again.
Correct.
So that's how development rights move. It's not a transfer of rights, it's a replotting of land.
Right. And they both have to be part of the plat.
Okay.
So if Weber was saying, I don't want to be part of this, that would be fine. Tesmers would have 7 development rights to work with instead of 8.
Okay.
But there was benefit to the Weber folks to be part of this plat. So that's how it works. If I have more than 1 property and I'm platting them together, there's a brief moment in time where, in order to re-subdivide them, I combine them into 1, combine all the development rights, and then re-subdivide them. And if you understand it now, help me write that down in a way that I can better explain it to people.
Well, I think the confusion is how they combine into 1 with a common ownership or the ownership must go to somebody, and then they're split like almost instantaneously back.
There's no actual time where we record the single parcel that's created from the merger.
Yeah.
Have multi-owners involved.
Yeah.
But
I think that's where the confusion is, where they think there's a transfer of rights in that regard.
We do not allow a transfer of rights. The only way to do it is by incorporating multiple properties into a single plat, like we're doing.
I'm glad this one came in, because it helps clarify some questions that came out of the last time that this came up. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the chance to try to explain it again. It is complicated. I mean, it really is, and it's hard to explain. So,
any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2020-91.
So moved.
Second, Padma.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Lothar?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
Bodema?
Aye.
And Schultz?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kendra. Okay, now we're on to 9D, which is a minor subdivision for St. Therese at 8200 County Road 116.
yes, Mr. Mayor, this is the City Hall property. And if we go to the next slide, the applicant is requesting approval of this minor subdivision to create 3 parcels. Parcel A will be purchased by St. Therese, and parcels B and C will be retained by the city. B will be the parcel that City Hall sits on, and C will be a future lineal park that was part of our town center southeast master plan. The property is guided mixed use and zoned downtown mixed use. And the council did approve a topo and wetland delineation waiver for parcels B and C on September 24th, again, which is the city parcels. Next slide. This image, pardon me, the blue outline is the existing parcel owned by the city. And the pink line sort of shows the parcel that St. Therese is going to purchase. The next slide is the minor subdivision itself that shows the 3 parcels. It's got the topo on it, so it gets a little confusing. So Jeff, if you show City Hall, just cursor over that for that would help. And then you can see there's a dedication to a new town center drive or city center drive that'll come in, and a new street that'll come out on the south side of the St. Therese property. And then there's that skinny piece along 116 that is parcel C, the lineal park property. Next slide. So we do have a minor subdivision process which has different standards than other subdivision processes. All parcels need to be 2.5 acres in size, which this is. The subdivision will dedicate right-of-way easements for future streets. They don't get deeded like they do in a plat, but they get dedicated through a document. We have included a condition that a blanket drainage and utility easement be provided over parcel A. And then like we do in multi-phase subdivisions, when development is proposed, the applicant will apply for a vacation of that easement and dedicate easements where they are specifically needed with the plat. Municipal sewer and water will be extended to the site, and park dedication shall be cash in lieu of land, and we are deferring that until parcel B develops. Next slide. I'm echoing, I hear from someone.
Yes.
The applicant's next steps, if the minor subdivision is approved and they have some timing issues with the purchase agreement, then they would proceed with the design for their campus per the concept plans the council has seen. And they're working through it, but the likely next steps are submittal of a preliminary PUD and a preliminary plat. And then following approval of that, a final plat and a final PUD. And we've talked with them about it being a multi-phase project, and that's why I say I think those are the likely steps. There may be more than one final plat plan stage. Next slide. And so with that, we do recommend adoption of resolution 2020-92, approving the minor subdivision with the conditions in the attached draft resolution.
Okay, any questions for Kendra? Kendra, I get asked about this from lots and lots of people. There's a lot of people looking at this project. Do we have any idea what their timing is on moving forward with the project?
The last conversation that I had with them is that they are currently in the design phase and that they are hoping to have an application in early next year, meaning application in January, February.
Okay. So all you people out there who have been asking me this, now you know as much as I know about it. So any real questions from Kendra? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2020-92, which is a minor subdivision.
So moved, Bottomus.
Second, Schultz.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bodema.
Aye.
Lothar.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
And Schultz.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Kendra.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Sayonara. Okay, now we're on to unfinished business, which consists of item 10A, which is a city hall remodel. At this point, we'll take public comments from anyone who wishes to comment on the city hall remodel project. So if you wish to raise your hand for Jessica and she'll put you on.
Thanks, Mayor. At this time, if you'd want to raise your hand, you can do that by pressing the *9 on your phone, or press the participants button and use this raise hand function. I don't currently have anyone raising their hand. If you'd like, we could wait a moment.
We could give them a minute. Okay, let's move on then. So the City Hall remodel project, who's handling this one, Brad?
Mr. Mayor, I'll take this one. I think I just have 2 quick slides, Jessica, if you want to put those up. But essentially, we're at a point with the remodel taking place. It started on November 9th and looking for some approvals from the council related to the project. Essentially, there's 10 of them all together in the proposal. The first one is regarding a camera update at City Hall. So we're looking at a new camera system to go along with the base system that was previously adopted or approved earlier this meeting for the capital improvement plan. We need an updated switch. We need a new battery backup. We're expecting some on-site IT assistance that will need to take place as we transition our staff into the new location. We have an update, council chamber electrical, and I had this number wrong in the staff report, so I apologize for that. It's actually $345, not the $425. We want you to authorize us moving forward with furniture purchase. In our budget, we have it estimated at $120,000. We're actually finalizing that. The reason for asking for that approval right now is timing. The contractors believe that we can move in at the end of January. And there's a 6 to 8 week lead time for getting furniture here once we order it. So looking for the authorization for the furniture purchase. Again, the estimate was $120,000. We do have a dumpster and trash removal on site that I didn't specifically bring to council, as well as temporary restrooms that are taking place out here. We do have the heated porta potty as our public restrooms for the first phase. So if you can, try to go before you come to City Hall. It's not the most pleasant experience these days. We also have some temporary storage that we have on site, and we'll continue for the remodel itself. And then finally, we'll need some door rekeying when the project is done. So looking for council, next slide, Jessica, to authorize those items moving forward. And just so we're at right now, we are projected to be on the exact same budget as that was approved at this point. There is some potential for the furniture budget to be a little higher, is my guess, as we have conversations moving forward. But I do think technology could come in lower. So at this point, I'm still projecting an on-budget project. So looking for a motion to approve those expenditures as presented, and happy to answer any questions on anything.
Any question for Brad? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to authorize approval of expenditures for the items as presented.
So moved, Bottom.
Second, Schultz.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bottom.
Aye.
Lothar.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
And Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. Okay, no new business, so go on to staff reports. So staff report 12A, active Corcoran planning applications.
Mayor, just an update that's in the packet, so no action required. If you have any questions, we can try to answer any you may have.
Okay. Any questions? So we'll just accept them. Okay, 12B, the pandemic response update. I assume Matt will be giving us first shot.
Actually, the mayor and council is just me. He's been putting in quite a few hours, so I gave him the
Okay.
evening off tonight, as there wasn't much from a public safety standpoint. But
Yeah.
if he were here, he would in detail go over the numbers. I'm not going to do that. It's bad across the state, as you all know. And I don't know a single person these days who doesn't know somebody firsthand who's had impacts. So we'll continue to operate as best we can here at City Hall. We do have plans in place. City Hall is still open from our regular hours, 8 to 4. From our standpoint, it's really not the danger that comes from the public, as we typically only have, a dozen or less people per day coming through. And we have plexiglass and everything. It's really about the interactions that people at their homes, for the most part. Jessica has a plan now. We have kind of cohorts at City Hall. Same thing with Matt and the police department, where people are working kind of in teams and limiting their exposure with others. So it might take a little longer sometimes to get a call back here at City Hall. We're doing the best we can of managing all operations, with most of our team being off-site at this point. I do have a request, and I'll go into that, but just because of actually the potential for staff being too short, I am actually asking the council tonight to authorize myself to make adjustments to City Hall hours up to and including full closure to respond to the pandemic. And it's really comes down to, do I have enough staff to keep it open? We have several staff right now either quarantining themselves, due to themselves, or due to their family members. A lot of our team have school-age children, and if an exposure in the classroom, the whole classroom goes down for 2 weeks. Other than that, we're having just discussions, for example, ice rinks. Right now, we don't want people to congregate, but gosh, our ice rinks are important, and who doesn't want to go down there with their family and skate around a little bit? And then internally, we're debating, okay, but games are going to take place, and you know what happens then. But there's the personal accountability portion. So we're just having all these different conversations that take time on what to do, what not to do, keeping Corcoran safe, as well keeping people's livelihoods moving forward too. So that's really all I have. As I mentioned, I would like the motion to authorize myself to make adjustments to City Hall hours up to including full closure as needed, and of course report back to you all in a timely manner. And again, that would be specifically because whether there's a new danger or I just don't have the staff to keep City Hall open.
Basically, you're asking us to authorize you to respond to the things as are absolutely needed, and there's nothing you can do about it anyway. But yeah, okay. I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to authorize Brad to react to the situation, to reset City Hall hours as necessary, up to and including full closure if required.
So moved.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, go for it, Brian.
Any discussion?
Hey, this whole COVID thing is affecting everybody, including our church, and I understand about closing things down,
Yeah.
so. And hey, if the governor is telling families not even to get together on Thanksgiving unless you're living in the same household, I just think, this is something that needs to be decided, I think, with the people who are there in the building. And I'm perfectly fine with it. Yeah. Support it.
Agree. We all agree with that, Brian. Well said. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Lothar?
Aye.
Bodema?
Aye.
Nichols?
Aye.
And Schultz?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Okay, the city council schedule coming up.
Mayor and Council, at that time of year, we'll actually have to approve, or we're going to try to approve a lot of the items for the following year. We'll actually have our taxation public hearing next year. As I emailed you, our tax rate actually trended lower than I anticipated it was going to be. So there's pretty positive tax impacts around the community for most people who didn't have pretty significant valuation increases. And then some items honoring some individuals and the job description and a few others. And with that, we'll just be rounding out the year.
Okay, any comments, questions on the schedule? Any other business?
Can I just ask the fee schedule, or is it just an update, or has there been a look at some of the fees involved?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And that might get shifted to the December 21st meeting just to finalize some numbers, but no, for the most part, an update. Now, that being said, we had some pretty significant recommendations for changes from our 5-year financial management plan for the water and sewer utility. But for the most part, everything else, it's pretty incremental.
Okay.
Has John given you any input on building permit fees?
We've had a pretty vibrant text thread going on throughout the meeting. There's been times when previous statements have said, we're never going to work in Corcoran, and now all of a sudden we're the best people to work with ever. So
it's a fun conversation. Okay, and John, by the way, I still love you guys, so that's no problem.
Notice I didn't add much at the end of the council, Ron. I apologize for my
No,
little
that's
rant
fine. You have a right, as you say, you have a right to your time on the podium. So, okay, no other business from council. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion, Lothar.
Second, Bottom.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bottom.
Aye.
Lothar.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
And Schultz.
Aye.
Great. Okay. Thanks for a good meeting, guys. Jeremy, thanks for your participation. I mean, you're getting up to speed, and I expected you to, but we're pleased that I'm pleased that you did. You were obviously well prepared, and appreciate your participation.
Thank you very
Good
much.
job, Jeremy. Welcome.
Congrats, Jeremy.
Happy
See you all.
Thanksgiving.